So, good morning, you guys. I want to mention that I did go to AEW Collision at the MGM Arena, Fenway Arena, and I had a really good experience there. Before I start, I want to talk about something that happened that I actually got like shoved by either Wheeler Yuta or one of the security guards. Because what happened was that there was Claudia was like flipping over a table, and I just had a drink, and I was like standing like in like. And like there's like an entrance area towards like the ringside area, so like they're just trying to shove me out of the way to have Moxley and everybody else kind of calm Claudio down. So I was just I felt a little mad about it at first, but I kind of said like I want to just like formally apologize just for being in the way. And it's very easy for me to say, oh well, I got assaulted to sue AEW. But I want to be just like Maven in a sense where he learns to say, what, if I do something wrong and if I fuck around, I find out. So, I apologize. And I know like there's sometimes in AEW shows where I may get a little rowdy, or, I may not conduct myself that well. Or I remember like one time, I was at World's End and I was taking selfies and it was right behind the announcer's desk. So somebody was like, hey, you're on camera, it just wasn't a good look. And I forgot, and I just didn't pay attention because I was like, I was a little too close to, some of the people who were speaking on television. So I just learned, I got to conduct myself better. I know another time, and I've told people the story, two things, is that when Adam Copeland debuted, I actually reached out to him, gave him a hug, and, I feel a little bad that I did that. I know, like, he was cool with it, but it's just like, got to have more emotional maturity. And there was also another time, I forgot what happened really, but yeah, but I got to be accountable for my actions, and and just not be a pussy really. Be accountable. Don't come here like a big crybaby and be like, oh well, they're mean to me or whatever. What's changed my life? The reason why I lived the best 4 or 5 years of my life since I got fired from my last job is because my therapist taught me you never twist when you're supposed to be accountable for something for when you're making excuses to play the victim. So with that said, I want to go over the match card. That first of all, they had Kevin Knight versus Lance Archer, and sometimes when you watch these matches live, it just goes by like a blur, like it was just a good offense, Lance Archer did a really good job, a lot of hard-hitting moves, like Kevin Knight really showed himself as a high flyer, and Lance Archer showed himself as a powerhouse. But I'm always not a big fan of the Don Callis family because they have so much potential, they have a really great physique, all those guys, but they usually lose way too much. So I do not like seeing Don Callis family lose because they could be like the top heel faction, but it's kind of like, what do you do with them? Like they usually lose. They're kind of like the babyface jobbers. That's kind of like their role. They're kind of like Team Rocket. They just lose way too much. So that really just, stifles them. And it makes Lance Archer look bad. Oh, well, a high flyer just kicked your ass, really. But they're also trying to set up, match it. They're trying to set up Kevin Knight and Speedball as friends and Ricochet as kind of like a villain, really. So I think what they're going to try to do is have these guys feud with each other because, obviously you need to, Double or Nothing is a few weeks away, so you got to start making matches, really, So that could be something. But it's also like, as I said, like 6 months from now, are they going to be working towards titles? Like, what is their goal? What is their motivation? Are they just there to be there? Because if they're there to be there, then it's almost like, why should I get invested in these people? But I think Kevin Knight has a lot of potential. He's a great high flyer type of wrestler. What does he want to achieve in AEW? What's his direction? And also with the Don Callis family, what is their direction? They just can't be, like, as I said, they're the Will Ospreay jobbers, or they're like the babyface jobbers. You have to do more with them. The next match was Josh Alexander and Takeshita versus Rocky Romero and Tomohiro Ishii. Okay, this was an okay match. Like I said, when you watch these things live, sometimes they go by like a blur. You don't remember that much, So it ended with it ended with Tomohiro Ishii getting hit by Rocky Romero, and then Rocky Romero and Josh Alexander are in the Don Callis family. So it worries me a little bit because now you have 5 members. So what are you trying to tease? That they're going to be part of Anarchy in the Arena or something like that, when that's not the right story for them. If you want to be different, what I would say is that in June, you should do this. In June, you should have Don Callis family versus a team for Blood and Guts. And then what you should do for Anarchy in the Arena, it should be the Ops versus the Death Riders. That would be the best way to do it. Because I think that way you kind of can save your best match, your best people and your main event attraction right now for the for Double or Nothing, because I think a lot of people would want to see that. They had Megan Bain beat two jobbers, nothing special, so she kind of threw them around a lot, and she did some hard hitting throwing moves, so it's as I said, what's going to happen with Megan Bain, because now Mercedes is going after the women's championship. She's probably going to win the Owen Hart tournament. I think that they're going to do Supercard of Honor, Athena versus Mercedes Part 2. She's going to get the ROH Women's Championship. So what do you have for Megan Bain? Because she can't just be randomly beating people every single week and there's no progression. What's next for Megan Bain? Next match was Adam Cole versus Claudio Castagnoli. This kind of ties as the best match of tonight with Commander Nick Wayne, and then also the women's tag team match, so, it was a really great match. It went a good long time. Adam Cole, took a lot of hits, really. It was kind of funny because, Adam Cole, fell into the fan area. I was drinking my, Samuel Adams, I was going to offer him some liquid courage, but, sometimes, you say, hey, drink this, drink that, security's going to be what the fuck is this really? So, post-match, Claudio just, flipped the fuck out, really. And it was also bad, too, because, Claudio was looking at me when he threw Adam Cole into the ringside area. He was, again, I was just a little out of it because I work a lot of hours. I was a little drunk. And he was, signaling to me to, get the fuck out of the way, really. So, again, personally, I apologize to him because it doesn't matter what condition I was in. I was just not using common sense. So I personally apologize to him, and I'll pull a Maven and take accountability for my actions. So Claudio, I apologize, and I apologize to AEW for that. And then post match, I mentioned that when he was trashing the ringside area and flipping over the table, that's a good visual because obviously Anarchy in the Arena, if you have him versus the Ops, Cesaro doing offense with Samoa Joe, Cesaro doing offense with Powerhouse Hobbs. That's going to be really gnarly to see. But yeah, like I said, security guards, just shoved me hard as they could, almost knocking me down, really, because they wanted to bring Moxley and the Death Riders, and then also get them to console Claudio and bring them out, really. And even in WWE, they do that because they have to kind of make sure every minute of television matters, really. I work at a hospital, so there are times when patients ask me to do something, and then I just have to ignore their request, or I have to say yes and then not do it. And it's the same idea that every job has that, where sometimes you have to be a little gruff, because if you're not gruff, what ends up happening is then they're going to have to be like Ned Flanders, and things are not going to get done if they're too passive. So like I've said, that it pissed me off because I was bullied a lot when I was a kid. I remember one time I forgot to brush my teeth, and I was going to go to the school bus in high school. My dad was like security guard. My dad shoved me and threw me into the bathroom, and he was saying, we're going to spend 5 minutes and monitoring me and criticizing how I brushed my teeth, really, and made me miss the bus, really. And it brings me up. I remember one time I was dealing with depression, and I was walking slowly in the house, and my dad just shoved me against the wall and said, move, damn it. So that's why I kind of people pushing me or shoving me, because, it reminds me of my childhood. My dad was just like Rochelle from Everybody Hates Chris, that consistent type of, what, you're a child, I can smack you, I can hit you, I can grab you, I can spank your butt, you're my girlfriend or whatever, really. Because, I grew up in a time where children were treated like property, the baby boomers, their parents kind of taught them that, really, so yeah, I just don't like being pushed or shoved, and I felt very, very hurt that happened. but I also just try to connect it with accountability, like, and that's kind of why I bring that up. Really, it really soured my night, but I'm more about accountability. And if AEW ever sees this video, I'm not like, oh well, give me tickets or whatever. It's just um, common sense. The Death Riders always like go to and from the ring area. That's just what they do. You know, um, it's common sense that I wasn't paying attention, and I need to be an adult about it, not a little like not like shift blame. Because one thing I'll tell you about a lot of adults is a lot of adults in this world shift blame, and I don't want to be that. I take accountability for what I did, and I fucked around and I found out. So the next thing was LFI versus Jobbers. Again, LFI is a really great team. They have a really great look. I'd love to see them versus the Ops. And I really think the Ops deserve the trios titles, because I think at this point, you need top baby faces. You need legitimate threats to the Death Riders, because in the beginning you had like Orange Cassidy and other people. But as trios champions, there's a lot of really great mashups. Imagine if they faced the Hurt Syndicate with MWP. Imagine if they faced LFI with Rouge and Dre Listigo and Mordos. Like that's really cool. Like, there's a lot of really cool trios teams. It's almost like, how are they going to work at the trios division? The next thing that I want to mention is that I really like this match, Commander versus Nick Wayne. Like, Nick Wayne did a really great job, because a lot of people were saying like, your mom's a MILF, your mom's hot, and call him a mama's boy. And like, Nick Wayne, because he's smart, he played with the crowd really. And when he won the title, he was playing with the crowd as well, really. So he kind of has like that smart ass Shawn Michaels type of thing about him. And I also like his theme song. Like, his theme song kicks like a motherfucker, kicks like a bastard, really. So I think in the beginning I was like, who the fuck's Nick Wayne? He got hired because of nepotism. He's a scrawny ass kid, really. But I think that what I would say for Nick Wayne is that he needs to go to the gym. He needs to put on a bunch of muscles, just like with Wheeler Yuta. Like, Wheeler Yuta needs to put on a bunch of muscles and stuff like that. Like, because they both look like high school freshmen. They look like they're in the same freshman high school class. So that would be my recommendation for them, really, because they look good for like X Division, cruiserweight type of people. But like I said, they need to hit the goddamn gym to, like, learn from Anthony Bowens and Kyle Fletcher to hit the goddamn gym. But I'm happy he's the ROH TV champion. I'm also happy that Christian and Mama Wayne and Kip Sabian were not out there, because the thing about it is you have to have heels win strongly. You can't always have heels cheat to win. I think Kip Sabian appeared, but I don't exactly remember. But if he didn't appear, excellent, because you can't always have heels cheat. If they cheat every single time, then they're not that great of a wrestler, really. So I was happy to see that. Nick Wayne played out the crowd really well. He really added to the entertainment factor. And I have a friend who does like YouTube reviews, who's a big fan of Nick Wayne, who's up in like Washington State. Really, we're actually both at World's End together. We were both at the both the Washington shows. Both Wrestle Dream shows, but Nick Wayne, he told me like Nick Wayne's a really nice guy. His mom's a really nice guy. He's a really nice woman. Really nice person to meet. But yeah, I hope he does well with the TV title, and I'm also happy they took it off of Commander, because when you have a title and somebody's been having for a long time, there's no progression, there's no nothing. Why the fuck should they have it? Like, when they took the title from Danny Garcia, was a good thing. They didn't do anything with it. The trios title, they didn't do anything with. They didn't do anything with the Death Riders. And then also, too, you look at like Takeshita and Commander, they didn't do anything with their titles. They didn't really kind of added any type of bravado or whatever to it, Hence why a lot of people don't want Jon Moxley to lose the title, because he's not really doing anything. He's not really making it a big deal, or it doesn't feel like he's engaging people with that title. Flaunting his gold like you see Mercedes or Tony Storm or other champions do. The main event match with Harley Cameron and Mercedes Moné, Chris Statlander, and Julia Hart. Chris Statlander was doing like double suplexes, and I really appreciate that, like showing her as a powerhouse. And then the other thing that I'm going to say is I understand why Chris Statlander won, and this was a great choice, because usually they would have Mercedes Moné win, but they had Chris Statlander beat Harley Cameron. And I would have actually had her beat Mercedes Moné because it wouldn't really hurt Mercedes. It would actually help the whole match because it would create some unpredictability. But it was a little unpredictable because with the way AEW books is that they have certain people win, their favorites win, and they usually have baby faces win. So just to see that happen was a little unpredictable. So I'm very, very happy that that happened. I was a little put off by the post match. Like Mercedes was like talking to the crowd, and isn't she supposed to be a heel? Like that's not what a heel should do, really. But I understand, you know, they care about the fans, they care about levity, they care about just reinforcing. Hey, no matter what AEW is, it is people going out there and giving their best and putting on a performance and all that. So I respect that as well, really. And then also too, like it's just really just to say, hey, you know what? Thanks for coming. Please come again. So while I felt that it wasn't appropriate for a heel to do that, I'm just gonna overlook that because the Boston crowd is a really good crowd. The next thing is that there are a few other things that happened on the show. Bowens did a backstage promo, and I was like, man, I wish he was on Collision, or even if he had a squash match. I wish they kind of did that with him, because he has a lot of potential. He needs to be consistently on television. And like I said, I think he can be booked as a world champion. So let's just really hope that. Like Kyle Fletcher can be a great villain world champion, and Anthony Bowens could be a great babyface world champion. So let's just really, book both those people strong. Let's be more consistent with them. Like Kyle Fletcher is very consistent. He's where he needs to be. He just needs to work towards a heavyweight championship, or when Will Ospreay gets it, you can put him in the the title, like that ladder match they have for a championship shot. You can usually put Kyle Fletcher in that and challenge Will Ospreay whenever. The next thing that I would say is that they did backstage promo with the trios champions, the Ops, and like I said, I really don't like that they do this. And they do this a lot with Collision. It would work so much better if you had the three of them come down and they actually talked in the ring, and that be that, really. But I understand why they couldn't do that, because the problem is that you have the Death Riders there. So it would make logical sense for them to attack them and start another big thing. And I think that would have actually been cool, but the problem is, it could be like, okay, since they may have an Anarchy in Arena match, you may want to just, save that for like next week or whatever, because you don't want to be too repetitive. So I just think that they should have been down with them. They should have been down at the ringside, but I understand, maybe they couldn't because of, continuity. I was also mad because there's no matches for Supercard of Honor, and I've said this before, that you had to make Ring of Honor a big deal. I looked at the Supercard of Honor thing on Wikipedia, and I'm worried because they said that, the way it looks is that there's going to be 8 matches for the Pure Championship, and I hate that title because it's like sophisticated, convoluted. They don't explain why that title matters, or why like having matches with those types of stipulations matter, really. So if it's like 8 women's Pure Championship matches, I bought a ticket to that show, but then I'm just not going to go. I'll be like, that match card's so crappy. I'll be rather like pimping that overtime at the hospital, because I'm not going to be wasting my time on bullshit. I'm not going to go down to Atlantic City to see a bullshit effort. And the next thing that I would say is, on top of that, there's no Double or Nothing matches, and they now next week they're going to be 5 weeks away. So by the end of by next week's show, they really need to start building that card, because I don't want to see like a thrown together card like they did at Dynasty. They really need to just have at least 2 or 3 matches announced. They need to decide what Anarchy in the Arena is going to be. And that be that. They could even do something like, and as I said, do the Ops and a few other people. Do the Ops with Hook and Willow Nightingale versus the Death Riders. And with that said, really, you can say something like, if the Death Riders lose, the World Heavyweight Championship goes to Samoa Joe. But if the Death Riders win, the Trios Championship goes back to them. Like that's just what they have to do, really. So, and then the Death Riders can always like find like one of the Bucks, or they can hire a member of the Non Callis family to help them out, and and that could be something really, and so like there's a lot of things that they have to put together. There's a lot of things that they have to set up, and just really take it from there. Really, they can even have like one of the Young Bucks or the Young Bucks say something like, "Hey, we're executives. We'll just create a handicap, or we're gonna make a 6-on-6." It's the Young Bucks, because Pac is out, and then you have Kenny Omega in that. That could be something as well, really. But they really need to start building towards Double or Nothing. They need to announce matches. It's one of their biggest shows of the year, so they can't just treat it like an afterthought. Overall, it was a really good show. Yes, it's WrestleMania weekend. I'm proud of them for having the show on Thursday, and I also feel like the last 2 nights they said, hey, even though it's WrestleMania weekend, AEW matters, and they matter by putting in a good effort. And I feel like they put in a good effort the last 2 nights. And I also feel like there is some storytelling elements that they have in this, so it's not just match after match. There's like it's going to lead to stuff, So I just can't wait to see the end result. The next show I'm going to is going to be ROH Supercard of Honor in Atlantic City. Then I'm going to go to the Glendale, Arizona show. I'm actually thinking about going to the Mexico City show, but I think with Supercard of Honor and the Mexico City show, it might be things where they may just not care. And I think that also one bad thing about AEW is if they get bad ticket sales, they may just say, okay, this is going to be a fuck off show. Just like with Grand Slam in Australia, where they wanted to sell a 50,000 seat arena. If they sold a 50,000 seat arena, they would have made that like a pay-per-view. But since they didn't do that, they just made it like a special episode of Collision. And I think that they're going to do that with the Mexico City show if it doesn't sell well. And honestly, I got to tell myself, is it really worth going all the way down to Mexico just to see that if I know it's going to be crap, really? And just like I'm doing with Supercard of Honor, if the match card looks crap, or they say something like, oh, we're not going to announce match until like the day before or whatever, or the day of, then I'm just going to say like, fuck these guys. I'm not ever going to a Ring of Honor show ever again, because they clearly lost my trust, really, So I'll see what AEW does. They have a lot of good things coming their way. They just have to it's just really good shows. It's having the right people speak. It's choosing the right main events. It's featuring the right stars, and then also featuring the roster very well, really. Like, as I said, you had Commander Nick Wayne. You had and that didn't main event the show, because usually with AEW they would have stuff like that main event, or Kevin Knight and Lance Archer. Those are not good main events. You had the right main event for this one, so you're getting better at structuring the show and other things like that. So, like I said, I think AEW has a bright future. They just have to keep listening to what people are saying that are both positive and negatives, mostly the positives, where people are analyzing and breaking down the show and saying, okay, these things are working. Or like people like me who are 50-50, where I will not, if it's all terrible, yes, then I'll say it's all terrible. If it's all good, I'll say it's all good. But I try to find the middle ground, because everything is a middle ground, So that's all I got to say. So overall, really great show. And once again, to Claudio Castagnoli, Adam Cole, to the AEW security, Death Riders, anybody else involved, I apologize for, being in the way. I got pushed. It made me pissed off because it reminded me of the times I've been bullied in my life, or when my parents objectified me. Oh, well, you're a kid, I can put my hands on you whatever type of way, really. But as my therapist taught me, take accountability for your actions. Never twist victimization and accountability, and you'll avoid a lot of problems in life. And that's one of the reasons why I've gone to so many shows, because I've learned to turn my life around from a very dark place 4 or 5 years ago after I got fired, and had to learn that even though I got fired, even though there were lies that were told about me, I got enough things happened for me to lose my job, and I'm better off learning the lessons I need to learn instead of being focused on getting screwed over in some ways. Accountability will teach you a lot in the life. And that's one of the reasons why you see people like Maven be successful on YouTube. And I know I'm going to be successful one day as well. Accountability will make your life a lot better.